Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Artellectuals podcast. Today we are featuring a wonderful guest who I've known personally when going to school during my undergraduate studies at Brooklyn College. Our guest today is Brandon Peralta, and he is an audio engineer, mixing engineer, and producer. You can find his work at brandonperalta.com, his Instagram at Brandon Peralta, and also on YouTube if you search his name. I learned about Brandon because I was looking for an audio engineer to record some projects. We have worked on solo projects, ensemble recordings, and music video collaborations. His career began as studio engineer and recording engineer at Red Bull Studios in New York. If you're thinking of Red Bull, the beverage, it is actually the same company. They have studios all around the world recording major artists. Brandon has been an engineer for a number of award-winning albums, some of which received awards like Best Urban Album of the Year. Brandon is extremely well-versed in his craft, and I look forward to sharing his story with you. Now, without any further delay, here's our interview with Brandon Peralta. Thank you so much, Brandon, for coming on. I really look forward to hearing about yourself, and we're going to start the session now.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I would love to learn more about where you were born, how you were raised, and what really got you into the music arena.
So, I was born in Brooklyn, and I've been here my entire life. Excuse me. What really got me into music was my middle school, believe it or not. I had a middle school teacher who really took an interest in me as a trombonist. He was also a trombonist. His name was Anthony Mazzocchi. And he was really the person that got me inspired to take up music as a career choice.
That's great. And what started your passion? So from there on out, after middle school, did you continue that path, or were there some breaks in the middle?
So a little bit of both, actually. Funny enough, I went the classical route for, I want to say, maybe 12 years. So from middle school until junior year of college, I was training every single day, practicing 6 hours a day, something like that, to like make it to perform in an orchestra. That was like my dream job. The break came junior year of college when I just got exhausted from, practicing 6 hours a day and, not communicating with people, not having time for like family and friends. And so I told myself I was going to take a break from college, which ended up just being a permanent kind of thing. Okay. I realized I extended my 1 year break from classical music when I was working a job as a waiter, and like the restaurant was really full, and I was like, why are there so many kids here today? And someone said, CUNY classes started today, and I was like, oh, awesome. Mm-hmm. So okay, this is gonna be longer than a year that I'm not going to school. So I just switched career paths immediately, like that day.
Awesome. Well, what were you actually playing in school, for those who don't know?
I was a trombonist. I was at CUNY Queens College, the Aaron Copland School for trombone performance.
Great. You went to Brooklyn College at one point, so we're going to get to that.
Yes, I went to a number of schools. I tried a couple of times before I ended up where I was. I did go to Brooklyn College for one semester, and then I transferred over to Queens College. Both for trombone, except for at Brooklyn, I was trombone performance and theory composition. It was double major.
Awesome. And that's how we met, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. Great. And then, so you got into recording. So after that break, you had being a waiter. What happened after that? So
I was waiting tables, and one of my older brothers was a DJ at this club called Pasha, which is now non-existent, but he was like a resident DJ there for a while, and he would always tell me, like, the people that make dance music don't know anything about music. Majority of them that like become famous, they're kind of just plugging away at their laptops, right? So like here you are sitting here with over 10 years of musical knowledge. Like I think he said if Beethoven was alive, he wouldn't be sitting at the piano. He would be sitting in front of a synthesizer. And I was like, you know what? That actually makes a lot of sense. And I had all this free time. I wasn't in school anymore. I was just working and maybe gigging still during this time. So I said, why not? I got a laptop and just started making tunes. That answers the question, right? I totally forgot the question
Yeah,
halfway
absolutely.
through.
No, that's good. We're totally going with the flow. I think that that's the best way to go about having these interviews. Anyway, I think that we all have something to say.
Yeah.
So I think it's nice to hear what's on your mind. So I would like to learn more about what landed your current work, because as we know, you did have a break. You have been working with Red Bull artists, and so I just would like to know, how did you get that working there today, and what's your role there right now?
So I'm no longer at Red Bull Studios. I do still work with the person who runs Red Bull Studios, with Chris Tabron. He's the chief engineer there. So I'm currently working as his personal assistant. I do mix assist work for him. I like prepare files that get mixed for him and stuff like that. General assistant work for it's in terms of engineering. But the way it got started, after I took that break and I was making tunes on my own, I said, you know what, I've been out of school for a year and a half. Either I like take up, producing and making music in this way seriously, or I have to find a job with the city. That was like, people were sending me these applications like become a sanitation worker, become a police officer. And, I grew up in a town where 7 out of 10 people in Brooklyn, like where I lived in Marine Park, Brooklyn, 7 out of 10 people work for the city. You're either one of those people, firefighter, police officer, all these things, teachers, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but I never saw myself doing that. My mother did that for her entire life, and like she was so tired, and I was like, I can't do it. I can't teach,
Okay.
So I ended up deciding to just take it more seriously, and I applied to go to this school called School of Audio Engineering. I was riding the train, and I got by one of their posters. They had a poster on the train, and I was like, you know what? That's a sign. I'm going to take that as a sign. I'm going to apply. Fortunately enough, the School of Audio Engineering in New York is located 4 floors above Red Bull Studios. And I remember so I'm going to school at SAE and also gigging as an audio engineer. At that time, we were working together in a recording capacity. I think I was recording you for auditions, maybe, at that point.
Yeah, you've helped me out a lot, actually.
Yeah.
So, and I've learned all about this whole thing. It's a big art what you're doing.
It's insane. You were like
and you're like
my first client. Now that I think about it, you were the first person that
Thanks.
like I recorded professionally in my mother's basement of all places. I cannot believe.
And you did and it sounded great. So you did a wonderful job working even there. So.
I can't believe that you came to that basement was so dirty. I can't believe you came there and recorded, and you called me again. That's amazing. You're a good friend. But
thank you. You're a good friend for helping me out. You've done several projects of mine, so I really appreciate it. And every time I do get a project, I would love to have you on board.
I can't wait to work with you again, man. I really can't. But so the school was basically 4 floors above, and I was gigging as an audio engineer, and I got this job at Webster Hall. A friend of mine was performing at Webster Hall and wanted me to do sound, and I needed advice on how to work their console, because I never worked their console before. And I went to go talk to my teacher, and he was like, I don't want to talk about that. I have bigger news. Essentially, he was in the elevator with someone who worked downstairs at Red Bull and found out that they were hiring interns, put my name in the ring, and I was interning at Red Bull Studios at night and then going to school in the morning. So I would go to school from like 10 in the morning to I think 3 we got out. I would wait at the Starbucks from like 3 to like maybe 9 o'clock at night for the session at Red Bull to be over. And then I would go in Red Bull and like clean up and, do dishes and stuff and vacuum for like 2 months before I finally interviewed to get hired in my position there.
That's amazing, and that's inspirational. I think a lot of people don't see behind the scenes. They just see that you worked and you made it, but there's a lot of that stuff behind the scenes that people don't talk about. So thanks for sharing that, and that's a level of commitment too, like you had to be the best in order to rise to that position. I think, you had to do things other people wouldn't want to do.
Oh, 100%. I mean, even at school, like that school is very much catered towards producers and beat makers, which it's 2 different things. Like people who produce, people who make beats, people who engineer. They're such distinct categories of working in this industry. Sometimes they kind of mesh, but really they're different. So when I was there, I quickly realized that I had signed up for something that was catered more towards engineers. And so I would stay there while I was in school before I got hired at Red Bull or was interning. I would stay there all day, every day, trying to learn everything that I could. It's a $20,000 commitment you make for 9 months, So I was like, okay, I just took out a giant loan. I was there
Wow.
all day, every day. I was like recording. I was calling whoever I could to just come and record because I needed all the experience that I could. And I think that's why that teacher recommended me, because like me and my friends were just always there, constantly, every day.
Amazing. I would love to learn more about how you got to the process of like hearing things. Even some like I'm a musician and I can't even hear when I listen to recording. You're like, oh, that's compressed. Oh, there's a little bit of something wrong there, and I'm just like, it sounds fine to me. So I'd just love to know like how did you get your ears to that level of just being able to pick up on those things?
It takes training. So much like when you're first learning to like tune your cello, a lot of people, they tell you can hear beats, right? If it's out of tune, you're going to hear the beats. But a trained musician can tell you that's sharp or flat. So like you can hear the difference between being sharp or flat. The untrained person hears beats. The even more untrained person doesn't hear anything wrong. It takes time and hard work. Also, fortunately, like I said, I'm an assistant for a mix engineer. And my job is to kind of suss those things out. So I'll get a vocal from an artist and I'll get a track. So basically when someone makes a song, they'll send you like their demo version of the song and then all the individual instruments and vocals. So my job is to make sure that the individual parts sum to equal the what they've been listening to. So like I've just trained myself to be, there's a click in this point here, and okay, this vocal sounds like it's more compressed in the individual tracks than it is in the, okay, so what's going on? And so it's took like 2 or 3 years of hard work and like a lot of emails to kind of figure out what things sound like, if that makes sense.
No, it does. That's great. And what do you ever find it like appropriate with clients to say, oh, you should maybe add something here? Like, when do you find that to be allowed? Because maybe some artists are sensitive about that. I would think
It's case dependent, right? Most of it kind of relies on your relationship with the artist. So if I'm in the room with Chris, the mix engineer that I work with an artist, the artist necessarily isn't paying for my opinion. They don't want my opinion. Like Chris is mixing it, okay. And if I hear something, it's not my place to kind of stand up and say, "Oh, that chorus is a little. Maybe you should add a little." That's not okay. That being said, if I'm in that same situation and someone asks me for my honest opinion, it's also my job to give my honest opinion. If you're in the room, you're in the room for a reason. You're allowed to have an opinion if it's asked for, but even that comes with a grain of salt. Like you wouldn't want to name dropping is something you have to be very careful with, because if you're like, oh, this sounds like Justin Bieber, that could be their least favorite artist, or they get compared all the time and they don't want to hear that anymore. They're going for something new. But your honest opinion is always appreciated. But sure. If it's something that I'm working on personally, so like, if I'm working on I've been working on an EP with a couple of rappers for the last year and a half, and it's their first time rapping. They have not a lot of experience in the studio. They don't know what it means to mix a song, to master a song. It's just so foreign to them. So in that regard, since I'm making the beat behind them, I'm recording their vocals, I'm mixing, I have more creative input, So if they're like trying to fit a couple words in that don't really make sense, or like they're trying to cram, I can say and comfortably say, maybe you can try singing it this way or rapping it this way. Because, it's a much more collaborative effort than me assisting someone else who's doing a job.
Absolutely. Great. I want to ask what, you're a very nice person to work with. There are Thanks, people man. Out there who are like, oh, that guy was an asshole. I don't want to work with him again. But you're totally not that guy. You're the opposite of that. You're someone who we like to hear, input, and, you're just chill, which is very good in this kind of industry. And you think, how much of that do you think has impacted your role and what kind of jobs you've been receiving?
100%. To be honest, the way that I act in a studio is because of all the stories that I hear from all of my clients. I hear all the horror stories of like, yeah, I went to record at the studio and I can't get a Pro Tool session from him and he's not responding. Or, yeah, like he told me that the verse was like, I should sing it this way, and that made me really uncomfortable. Like, it's my first time working with you, I'm not going to be doing things like that. But after a couple of months, once I feel like we have each other's trust, that's when I can kind of, give my input. But it's 100% impacted all the work that I get. I mean, the last, I want to say 4 or 5 gigs have all been word of mouth, and it's purely because someone had a bad experience with their last engineer. And it just goes to show it's not always about how much you know, it's about like how you treat people.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
Just being cognizant of everyone in the room. Reading the room is very important in this industry. And when I was in school, they used to call it vibe, and by the time I left school, I hated that word. But when you're in a working environment, it's very much important that you're able to like keep the vibe up and keep everybody happy. And just, my worst fear is that there's someone out there that's like, man, I worked with Brandon and like, I can't get a Pro Tool session or something like that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or like, yeah, and he told me this thing, and like, that's nightmares. I have nightmares about it.
Oh, well, I mean, it's a similar situation with performers. They do also feel the vibe of the audience, and that plays a effect on how they perform. Also, comedians, for example, they have to get a laugh. That's their cue. If they don't, that's bad news, right?
Exactly.
So, I think we're in a similar situation in the entertainment spectrum.
Exactly.
I think that's important. So it'd be great to learn about what how this current pandemic has been affecting your work right now, and what you're doing to stay busy and things like that.
It's been, luckily I'm on an upswing. When March hit, I ended up actually getting a really bad sore throat the weekend that the New York on Pause started. And of course, it was just allergies. Luckily, it was just allergies. But I'm getting sick. I'm losing my voice. My throat hurts. Oh no, my fever went up a little bit, and the whole world is like shutting down around me. But luckily, I was healthy. I ended up keeping some work into April. As far as working with Chris, that's my main job. But all of my personal work immediately got shut down. I was in the middle of producing 2 albums. I was in the middle of recording 2 albums, and I was in the middle of mixing an album. So that's 5 projects, and they're all being worked on in different studios. Most of my work, if I'm doing it at home, I can, there's some stuff that I can do at my studio or in any studio. But if I'm mixing at a studio and I'm using hardware, I can't take the hardware with me home, Right. Or if I'm producing
that $20,000 console, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Or if I'm, creating a song with synthesizers in a room, and I don't have access to those synthesizers anymore, and the artist wants to make a change, I can't really do anything without that synthesizer. So the studios that I was working at were closed indefinitely. Actually, I got the notice that they were closed during a session. I was producing a song with an artist, and one of the engineers came in and was like, hey, your session tomorrow got canceled. The whole building's shutting down. Wow. So it hit me like immediately. Luckily, though, unemployment just came through last week. So I've been kind of just living off of that for the last 2 weeks. And I'm still working, but my rates have had to be cut in half. This year, I was aiming on doubling my rate, and unfortunately, I've had to halve my rate due to everyone's hard up. But also, like, I'm not in a position where like I'm super stressed. So I'm happy that in some way people are still being able to make music and like put their music out because I had to slash my rates. So like I'm kind of happy that it happened that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And long term, it's gonna reopen, and hopefully things will.
Exactly.
I mean, what do you think? You think that studios will still be, coveted? That would be something that people need to go to in the long term,
I'll be honest. I was offered a couple of recording jobs in the last maybe 2 months. I've turned them all down. The idea of being with a person that I don't live with in a room for like 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, and singing, and we're breathing at each other. It scares. I'm scared. I can't do it. So I've switched only to remote work for the time being.
Okay.
Yeah, it just freaks me out, especially because like a lot of studios are just like poorly ventilated because like they're soundproof. There's only an AC or something, and yeah, I don't know. And also, there's
Especially singers, right? They're gonna
Right.
have an issue.
Right.
That's super spreaders. Yeah.
and just like there's you go to a studio, there's gear that other people are touching. There's a console that everyone's have their hands on, and there's a mouse that I would bring my own mouse, my own keyboard. I'd be so no
scary.
recording sessions for the time being. Not until maybe like July, I think.
Yeah, July would even be, hopefully, that would happen. Yeah, there's one client that wants to have a wedding in August, but even then everyone shut down, so they're all doing things in 2021.
Right.
But it's good that you're able to just figure things out while you're home and getting that support.
Yeah.
Doing remote sessions. What's your long-term goal? Now that now you have time to think about. I'm sure you have more time to think about what you want to
More than ever, yeah.
How your career, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that really changed last year. Or I guess going into this year, I had a bunch of goals. I was, like I said, I was trying to double my rate because I was working at rates that were just very low rates for the amount of work that I was doing. And so I was hoping on making a little bit more money this year. I was hoping on splitting my work more evenly. So lately I've been doing a lot more recording than I have been doing mixing. So I was hoping to try and mix more projects than record, or at least do 50-50. So I guess those goals are still the same. Going into 2021, the goals are just the same. Try and get more clients, get more outreach. Overall, I just want to make music. Like I never thought that I would have a job in the music industry once I like took that first break and kind of left the classical music. I thought that was it, until I started producing. And now I don't have a job in music. Now I'm like my own boss in music, which is like insane to think about. So the goals are just short term, stay afloat. Long term, just expand. More clients, more work,
Awesome.
more outreach, all that stuff.
Perfect. Great. And you're also doing some things on YouTube. I've been seeing some videos, some instruction videos.
Yeah, I mean, that was more of like a side project. I wanted to do that last year as a way to just increase outreach, but it's so tough competing with like these people who actually do YouTube. I'm an old man at heart, I lost my hair at 19. Like I'm an old man at heart. I don't have the energy to kind of, sit up there and be like, what's up guys? Welcome to my tutorial. I'm trying. It's an uphill battle right now to kind of stay motivated.
It's an uncomfort zone a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to people to figure that out, because there's so many people now doing YouTube, and I mean it's a great resource, I think. Also, just to collect, not just to mention that there's also, you could collect income through that, but reaching other audiences and
Right.
getting potential clients and things like that. I think that's really a great marketing tool.
It also just spawned from the fact that like as an assistant, like people's clients come to me for help, and I have a bunch of like friends that are producers and beat makers and all this stuff and engineers. And constantly they're like, how did you do that thing? Or like, Ableton's being a little weird, or Pro Tools being a little weird. And I work in all of the DAWs. So like it kind of spawned from like, people always come to me for help. Now I just send a video. Here's my YouTube video, just watch. I don't have to send the same text over and over.
Right. Cool. I would love to get some feedback, like resources from you, like mic placement, things like that.
Oh, dude,
I think you're so
hit me
knowledgeable
up.
of it.
If I showed you like my text messages, they're all, everything during the quarantine has just been like, hey, how do I like mic a guitar? Or like, hey, like I'm gonna record my vocals. Where should I stand? Or what microphone? I love it. I love it.
Awesome. Yeah, that would be great. Please feel free to raise any topics that we haven't spoke about yet. If you have anything in mind that you want to address to viewers.
I mean, one thing that comes to mind is like, I remember when this first started, I was almost like excited to be trapped home in my studio. So like I said, I've been recording more than I've been like mixing or producing lately. And recording is one of those jobs where that's not my creative. That's not my time to put my creative input in. That's me being an operator. I'm recording someone else's creative input. But I was excited to like stay home and stay home and like record and make my own music. But there was also this weird amount of pressure that came with being home and having to make music. It was like this weird, and it was almost crippling where like I would sit down in my studio and like try and make a song or make a beat and nothing would come out because of like all the stuff that was going on. And it started feeling guilty. I was like, man, like I've been dying for time to make music. And now that I have all the time, I just can't. So I think that
seems to be a common trend,
it
that
is.
I've heard from other people too. Yeah.
And it's just a good reminder that like this is hard and no one was ready for this. And like there shouldn't be any pressure on you as an artist to like create something out of this. Like, which is funny because normally like music was my outlet. That's how I dealt with things. This to me was like a giant. Like music is not help. Listening to other people's music is great. Like that's been helping me a lot. But like the create, like I feel like there's a blockage somewhere. But there shouldn't, like, don't feel pressured to use this time.
Right.
Like the you pressuring yourself to make something is gonna like be counterintuitive in the long run. Like if something wants to come out, it'll come out. Don't think that you have to because you're stuck home.
Right. That's good advice. And lastly, what words would you have wisdom to have for artists who were in your boat way back when? What kind of words of wisdom do you have for them now? You know, if they're struggling or they're a little bit upset with how their life is going.
I would say two things. If you don't know something, be honest. Just be super, super honest. And the amount of knowledge you don't have is greater than the amount of knowledge you do have. And that's like the first step to like mastering anything. Accepting help and like if someone is, offers you to like, oh, this is how you can record vocals and you're like, I know how to record vocals. Let them, explain. Maybe they're going to tell you something you didn't know. You might learn. Just always be open to learning. And secondly, if someone asks you if you know of an artist and you don't know the artist, don't just be like, oh yeah, I think I've heard of them. Because if you do that...
We're all guilty of that.
Right. I used to do that all the time. And it's just weird. There's like some weird social pressure to like know every piece of music,
right.
Especially if you're a musician. But odds are, if you're like, yeah, I think I've heard of them, and you're like, I would say you're not going to look them up. You're going to be like, oh yeah, I think I know that name. And then like the conversation goes on, blah, blah, blah. But if you're honest and you say, I don't know who that is, you're going to learn about some really dope musicians. You know what I mean? I guess
that's a good point.
Just be open. Mm-hmm. Be open to learning, be open to new artists.
Great.
And don't be afraid of your own ignorance.
Good point. Well, thank you so much, Brandon, for giving me your time. And actually, the intro of this podcast that I'm doing is going to be your mix session, the Paganini Michael Jackson one we've been doing.
Oh, nice!
Just a little segment of it. I think that would be appropriate.
Nice.
So I would love to plug in your information. So you have an Instagram, you have YouTube. I'm going to put that in links and stuff. But if you could tell me right now where the people can go to find your work.
Yeah, of course. You can find me on Instagram at Brandon Peralta. Last name is Peralta. You can find me on my website, which is brandonperalta.com. And you can probably just search me on YouTube under Brandon Peralta as well. Those are the main modus operandi.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure, man. I really had a good time learning about you, and you inspired me. So I look forward to our next session and talking more in the future.
Me too, man. Miss you a lot.
Miss you too, man. Thank you.
All right, stay safe, buddy. Thanks for having me.
You too. Take care.
Peace.